Welcome to the Anklers Art and Crafts Podcast, a series where we talk to the talented artisans behind the biggest contenders in film and television. I'm Christopher Rosen, Ankler Media's deputy editor, and I'm so happy to bring you my recent chat with the acclaimed craftspeople from Wicked for Good. Oscar-winning costume designer Paul Tazewell, Oscar-winning hair and makeup designer Frances Hannon, and casting director Bernard Telsey. This episode of Art and Crafts is sponsored by Universal.
Elphaba Throp, I know you're out here. Just come in before the monkeys spot you.
There's no going back. This is between us, the wizard, and I.
The Wicked Witch can't elude us forever. Not with Prince Fiero and his squadron hot on her trail.
No good deed goes unpunished. That's my creed.
The wonderful Wizard of Oz. No one believed in you more than I did.
Elphaba. They're coming for you.
I've heard it said that people come into our lives for a reason. I know I'm who I am today because I knew you.
Think of what we could do together.
Like a comet pulled from orbit as it passes the sun. Like a seed drop by a skybird in a distant war. You can say if I've been changed for the better.
Bring me the broom of the Wicked Witch of the West.
For a while there, I thought you changed.
I have changed.
It's time. For both of us.
To fly! Because I knew you.
You're the only friend I ever had.
Because I knew you.
And I've had so many friends.
I have been changed for good.
But only one that mattered.
I'm off to see the wizard.
I'm so excited to speak to you all about Wicked for Good. The movie obviously starts about a year after the events of Wicked. It seems like 12 months. And I guess I wanted to ask, starting with Paul and Frances, how did you decide, or how did you go about making sure, in Paul's sake, I guess, the costumes, especially on Elphaba and Glinda, felt like you could show the elapsing of time through their costumes at all, and kind of catch the audience up without even the audience realizing they're being caught up in kind of where the characters are when we meet them at the beginning of Wicked for Good.
Well, it was really important. I mean, and actually, the way that we conceived of both films was continuous. Because like the musical, on Broadway, the stage musical, it's a first act and second act. So the story is a continuous story, and there wasn't really a lot. I mean, we didn't even have the luxury of shooting them either consecutively through time, or we were shooting both at the same time, and within a week we would be shooting Wicked Part 1 in the first couple of days of the week, and then the rest of the week might be in Wicked for Good. So it was really, and also in the way that I was thinking about these characters and developing the look of Oz overall, I wanted to create an emotional arc that would be consistent, and that the sensibility, the fashion sensibility or clothing sensibility of each of the characters would be continuous, even though they were in different throughout their, like anyone throughout their life, they are in different environments. So, with Elphaba, we open up with Wicked for Good. She is, she's being the heroic savior of the animals, flying in on her broom. She's got a pointed hat that was made iconic by the first movie, by Wicked Part 1, but it's expanded to get a bit bigger. The coat, the sweeping coat, also, where we've seen her tailoring for Shiz, it's very angular. The shoulders are always very prominent. I've exaggerated that, or I've expanded that as well, so that she, when she lands, her presence is as strong as possible. The same with her boots. They got taller, both, the height of the top of the boot right under the knee, but then also the heel as well. So her stature just, continues to grow. But then the other element was that, to show the passage of time, her clothing has started to deteriorate because of how active she's been, and she's flying through the air. You see that her cape has started to fall apart. Her coat starts to, fray and fall apart. And she still has remnants of the dress that she wore coming to Emerald City to first meet the wizard. She's still using that as her top. So she never went back necessarily to be a part of the rest of the Ozian community. She has, from the point that she jumps out the window, she's lived in exile in the forest. So I wanted for her clothing to reflect that as well. So that's what sets up, how we first engage with her, in her next chapter, the next chapter of her life, basically. This is similarly with Glinda. She's embedded within the structure of Emerald City. So her style matures. It becomes more, where we see these elements of a draw to Hollywood glamour, with, even her peignoir that she, she does popular in. We see that reflected in her clothing, as a figure of good, within the Emerald City Palace. And then it moves into, being this propagandist image of, Glinda the Good, when she goes into the lavender and blue dress. So, it's just, wanting to follow through and be consistent about where these women started and how, where they will end up eventually.
And Francis, I want picking up off that, especially with Glinda, and obviously I felt like Fiyero too. They just look so less fresh. They look more mature, like kind of like Paul was saying there, in terms of like being part of this apparatus in Emerald City now. I guess, like, how did you kind of go about making subtle differences to Glinda's makeup and Ariana's face and stuff, and even Jonathan's too, to make them look more kind of like cogs in that machine, I guess.
Yes, it really is like just changing the nuances and staying with the very subtle look. But with Elphaba, we darkened her hair, made it longer, but made her braids much shorter, so it left her freer, which complemented everything Paul was doing with the costume as well. It left it more flowing, and for Elphaba, more able to use her hair as part of her power, especially on that opening scene where she goes down to the animals. And then we had the contrast with Glinda, we did likewise. We made it much paler, and just those changes in hair color changed the girls completely. We did Elphaba's makeup was much stronger, more contoured, and Ariana's was pretty much keeping it the same, just making it much darker around the eyes. And these small changes and in the color of the bases and everything just made them more mature. Same with Jonathan, just changing the style slightly, not making it quite so, his hair so floppish and free as it was as the young man in Shiz, and the stature and the change of costume, the structure in his suits really made him look much stronger. Always working with the artists as well. It was a real collaboration with everything John and the artists and Paul did, and it really pulled off the look, really.
did you, I mean, is that like a lot of, to find like the level of, like you said, it's very nuanced. It feels very like these subtle things that you really, maybe as a viewer, not even noticing. Are you doing like a lot of, but it's coming through, are you doing a lot of like tests? Like how challenging is it to find the right level of nuance for like that kind of like that makeup?
Yeah, well, as Paul said, we thought of it. It is one film to us. It is one project, and you do your timeline, your time arc, or your plan from beginning to end, and then no matter where you're pulled into the storyline, be it Wicked for Good or Wicked Part 1, both on the same day, sometimes even, you knew exactly what part of the storyline you were cutting into for them, and therefore you knew where to go, whether you'd be taking off the makeup or making it much denser, adding nails much longer, or removing them if it was going back to their early stages. They're small things, but every small thing made the bigger picture work really well. And and the girls were wonderful as well. They often, they even on the day sometimes after they'd had a rehearsal, the art girls, meaning Elphaba and Galinda, might find something that they wanted, like Elphaba might say, I really need my lips stronger today. I'm feeling that she's showing something that I didn't discover before, and so one moves with the artist and their storytelling all the time, but you do have a really good ground line ready and learned like you're doing exams, and you know exactly where you're going to go with the basics and then leave it open to the collaboration.
It's amazing. Bernie, first of all, I'm so glad you're here, not just because you're obviously such a legend in the field, but because, like we talked about this before we started recording, but casting director is finally set to receive Academy recognition this year. I know you're on the short list for Wicked. I guess just overall, before we talk about like this incredible job you did casting this movie, what does that just generally mean as a casting director to see you potentially in your field get that kind of recognition from the Academy after all this time?
It's pretty chilling. And it's so exciting because it just makes me think of all the casting directors who were, ahead of me, who paved the way for this profession and who really gave it a name, from everything to main title billing rather, to just a whole career, the Juliet Taylors and the Marion Dohertys. And it's just so wonderful that it's going to make everybody know, oh, that's what a casting director does. It's a profession and you can make a living, and it is part of the craft. And, it's part of the art form.
I mean, and obviously I think what you did here with Wicked is truly an art form. I just like, it's hard. You have like, it feels like you needed 1 in a million stars times 2, right? For Elphaba and Glinda. You have Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande obviously are truly amazing. I can't picture anybody else in the roles, even though obviously I could, because like we had the Broadway production that I know you were involved with as well. I guess like just for starters, and you guys like talking about how you kind of like these movies are shot together, like you're saying, and like obviously cast together, but there's so much challenging material to me, it seems like, in the second act of the show and in the movie, right? Because there's a lot more dramatic material maybe, and like to find performers who are able to do that. I guess like how did you kind of like how did you go about like for Cynthia and Ariana finding, like knowing that they could do everything that these roles require, where it's like I could think of actresses who could do the comedy or the musical of Glinda, right? But not like maybe the dramatic stuff that Ariana has to do in Wicked for Good. And like vice versa for Cynthia, I guess. Like, how did you kind of like find this whole thing? Yeah,
knew where the roles had to go from Act 1 to Act 2, or from movie 1 to movie 2. We really explored the material from beginning to end with these women, and kudos to Ariana and to Cynthia, both who I'm sure you've heard came in and auditioned, and it really was a movie where everyone was going to have to do that, because that's the way we're going to tell who are the right women to play these two parts, especially because of the legacy of these roles. And, most movies, the audiences doesn't know who these people are, right? And everyone knows who Elphaba and Galinda is because it's been running for 25 years. So we really had to find 2 women that were going to bring it to 2025. And we're really going to be able to look at it from a fresh, new perspective. And, with Cynthia, obviously an Academy Award nominee and wonderful stage actress, it was really about exploring the first part of Wicked, the vulnerable side, the stuff we didn't see in Harriet or Color Purple. And with Ariana, it was really about exploring in her auditions the second half of the movie, because we all know she's an incredible singer and she's incredibly funny. But what about all the depth and all the other stuff? And they both, they immediately it was them when they came in. And they just showed you that they had that vulnerability and they had that heart. And more importantly, they listened to each other. I mean, so much about acting on a movie is listening, where you're not singing a song like on stage, or you're not busy moving. You're just, the camera is on you. And so much of what John did in this movie is just allow the camera to be on those two women. And I feel like as an audience, you're leaning in because of what they're doing. They're so emotionally connected to who these women are and to that journey that they were perfect.
In the auditions, was there like, I mean, I know, I think Ariana audition several times. I think, right, maybe they both did, but I know, like, I feel like, was there something in those auditions that you were like, what do you get as a casting director, I guess, generally? Like, what are you looking for in auditions like that? Especially when you have like you said, like Ariana Grande is a massive superstar even before Wicked. So like, what are you looking for in that kind of situation?
Obviously, we knew she could sing, and obviously she came in for Elphaba and Galinda. You know, she did those songs, and the woman can sing anything. But immediately it was, she's very much Galinda. And then it really was about, and, you know, she was so wonderful because she took all these adjustments from John, and then she came in for Tiffany and I and really wanted to work on the role. And the first thing early on was just John saying, now we need to forget about Ariana Grande and just think about Galinda and just be who you are and not be Ariana. You know what I mean? We had to make sure the audience isn't feeling like they're watching Ariana Grande do Galinda. And she did that so beautifully because with each time she came in, she just stripped away any preconception of who Galinda was or who she was, and just naturally became her because she has all the tools for it. But she's just not used to having to play that because she hasn't been acting as much. I mean, she started in the theater, so she had all the right tools. And she was just wonderful.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's an incredible performance, and I mean, like, especially like I think the way she lands the emotions of Glinda in Wicked for Good is really remarkable. And there's obviously so many transformations in this movie. Literal, I mean, or you know, with the characters you have like Bach and Fiyero having transformed into Tin Man and Scarecrow. I find those like. I still don't know how you guys did this in terms of like the makeup and the costuming, I especially with Bach and Ethan Slater. I guess, Francis, how did you kind of...
That kills me, that scene.
It's an unbelievable. And like the way that I find the makeup, I find the makeup like so incredible because of the way you're able to get so much out of the performances from the actors too, right? They're not being overcome by the makeup. And it just feels like I'm really looking at a legitimate thing, even though I know it's not. So I guess, like, Francis, how did you kind of start with Bach and like Ethan to make sure you were going to be able to get the emotions that the performance needs and also make it look visually like it does, and kind of working with the prosthetics and even, I'm sure, working with Paul and stuff too on the costuming to make it all come together?
Yes, with Paul and John very much in the very early days, and finding out from John what his Tin Man should and would be, and then within the scene and how John saw that scene developing. But I think it was such a beautiful, he did it so beautifully, John, the way he used everything in the room, that was our inspiration to the design, to part of the design, and a nod to the past, but not by any means looking to replicate it or to bring in anything from it. But it was very much based on the early bound illustrations, as Paul says. And it was with doing it, though, with it, trying to keep Ethan and likewise with trying to keep Jonathan as Scarecrow, it's very important never to go too far with don't move away from the actor when you're trying to find what their new look is, because I think so often in our industry people lose the actor with what they put on them and they lose the expression. It's not just leaving the eyes free. And I think what was achieved with Bach in particular, and along with Mark Coolio, who made all the pieces as well, was keeping within Ethan's face shape. I mean, where we hit the point of the face or along the cheek, small details people won't know, but the point where the actual angle is actually falls totally in line with this natural line here. So you've never removed anybody from a human to a thing, an obstacle. You've always left that human bit there. So whenever Bach expressed or Tin Man expressed his disgust and his fear and his his emotion, every bit of the prosthetic moved with how his face would have been without them. And that really left him very human, I think. So regardless of him being silver, contact lenses, silver teeth, everything being made of jug handles and teapot spouts, you never lost Bok in there, and you never lost not one single bit of what the emotion that Ethan put into that character. So I think it's the finesse is the really important thing, keeping it super fine and staying with the actor's face. Don't ever take your ideas too big that you've lost what you're trying to come from the heart outwards.
Right.
And Paul, for you, how about like getting the costume, the look right for obviously for Tin Man and Bok?
Well, as Francis mentioned, I was basing the silhouettes for the Tin Man and the Scarecrow. I mean, because throughout it's embracing the DNA of Wicked, and then largely the Wizard of Oz. So because those are the characters we know and love, and wanting to make sure that the audience is able to engage with those characters. So I went directly to the original, which was the illustrations from the bound books, because that's what the figures for the Wizard of Oz film. That's what those were based on, and then looking at those silhouettes and trying to create a marriage between where we end with the human Bok or Fiyero, and then where we need to pick up and what that transformation is going to be, because both of them come out of magical spells, and that Elphaba is cast. So the fun of it was that with Bok, you've got the office of Nessa Rose, and how all of the pieces come together to then create a silhouette that is something that we recognize, topped off with the funnel hat. And the funnel hat is from the original silhouette. And, it's all, as the Wizard of Oz film, that's from that as well. So, just wanting to keep it all as magically derived as possible. With the Scarecrow, it's more about the Fiyero in this uniform that's very stately, that's austere and beautiful with all of its bullion. What happens when you translate that into a Scarecrow? What happens to the bullion? So we went about creating custom braid that was woven out of straw, or woven out of actual grass, and then a little bit of gold, and then the change of the uniform into sackcloth, the boots that are directly connected to the original Scarecrow silhouette. So all of those pieces, trying to thread all of that together so that visually it feels authentic and consistent with the culture of the Wizard of Oz.
And Bernie, obviously casting those two roles, I know, like we said, like this is we're in 2026 now, hard to believe, but I mean, this movie came out in 2025, casting these for a while. Jonathan Bailey is one of the maybe biggest stars in the world, right? He was in between Jurassic World and Wicked. I think he was like the biggest box office star of last year, and
before he got cast in this,
right? Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. Getting kind of finding him. Was he even in Bridgerton before you cast him at this?
Yeah,
for this, or no? Is that just coming out?
The only thing that had aired was Bridgerton 1, so he was the supporting brother. He hadn't aired that lead brother yet, where it was his storyline. And
man, he's so great. Obviously, he was so great in Wicked Part 1, and he's so good again in Wicked for Good. Landing the emotional stuff. I just think he's really heartbreaking, obviously, at the end of the movie as well. How did, finding him and knowing that he'd be able to, what was, was that a great moment?
A fun story. I knew Jonathan because I'd seen him in Company at the West End when I was in London casting another movie, and seen him in other things. So I knew who he was. And then the minute we started working on Fiyero, we also knew he's a great dancer. Just, as casting people, you just know who people are. So we knew he sang, we knew he danced, and we knew he was a wonderful actor. And we met with him early on, Tiffany and I, and he was just so perfect because, Fiyero is a really tricky part, even when we cast the Broadway show continuously, because you have to really like him and yet, he's pretentious as hell. You know what I mean? It's like, and he knows it, but yet you still have to really care about him, and especially in part 2. So we were trying to get Jonathan right from the beginning. And, the classic situation was he was not available. He was shooting Brigatin. He was also just being talked about cast for that Showtime project.
Fellow Travelers. Yeah.
Traveler, like they didn't have their dates yet, but he was already offered that part. So there was just no way it was going to work out. And we had to move on and, look for other people, of course. But we just kept coming back every time we would do auditions, and there would be somebody who was close, but not it. We'd be like, it's Jonathan Bailey. But we can't talk to him. We can't talk about him to John and to Mark Black because he's not available. And that's going to make it even harder to find someone if they fall in love with him. And, luckily we just kept being those annoying casting directors who checked in with his manager at least every 3 weeks, just in case, Fellow Travelers' schedule changed or Bridgerton's schedule changed. And lo and behold, COVID happened, and just COVID happened. And because of the COVID, it was like the one, gift. Everybody's schedule changed, ours included. Well, the minute our schedule started changing, we knew other people's schedules would be changing. Fellow Travelers, Bridgerton. So we just were in constant contact while we were continuing to cast the role. We were in constant contact with his manager, Duncan Milliship. And lo and behold, all of a sudden it looked like there was a window that this could work. It would be difficult. He'd be shooting 3 things at the same time. But if he's the man and he's the choice, it can be worked out. And then that's when we brought him in London for John, and then John fell in love, and then Mark Platt fell in love, and then it was like, okay, now let's make it all work out, and somehow all 3 projects made it happen.
It's crazy. And, he's just so good in it. Yeah, it's hard to imagine someone else doing it again, even though
ideas, and we were just so happy it worked out. Persistence.
But hearing you guys all talk about this, and I know we have to wrap here shortly, but I guess the amount of effort, it's just such a huge task to pull this off and to actually do it so successfully, which I think people would agree that these movies, not only financially, but I mean creatively, and it all feels so everything is so tactile, right? It feels so realistic, especially, and I understand there's obviously tons of visual effects as well, and certainly the lion is, there are visual effects, but the makeup and the costumes, these are such really handmade things, and to see them so I don't know, bespoke for such a big movie, it's heartening for me as a viewer. And I guess Paul and Francis, you guys have worked on many big projects. I guess what was it like? What is your takeaway here, having now this is the end of the line for Wicked, right? But what are you taking away from that, and getting how are you going to remember this, I guess, now and even a few years from now?
I mean, I think that it was really the key, because John instructed Nathan that all of these sets would be real sets. He wanted to be able to touch it. He wanted an analog connection to it, and I think that it makes a huge difference, especially in at this time when we're talking a lot about AI. We're talking a lot about we're creating epic films digitally, something like Avatar, so it's, we're well into kind of digitally created universes, where this was completely tactile. I think that it makes the difference in the performances, in how it looks, in how we developed ideas, because it's human made. It's it is it's springing out of our head in our in our imagination, and then there are human hands that are creating this for film. And I think that that's really that is its signature style. And I think that is its superpower, really. Yeah. To speak of what my takeaway is I'm heartbroken for this period to be done. Totally. Every time I see everyone, both Bernie and Francis, anytime that I see that family that created Wicked, both films, it fills me with warmth because of what, it's the story, it's all of the players, it's the amazing cast, it's, the creative team, what that process was. Yes, indeed, it was really challenging. I'm sure that all of us have stories that are, it just, it's made for a book, but even within that, the experience was just a beautiful experience that is so rare, where all those pieces come together. And then to be able to walk away from this experience and still feel the same way is indeed just as rare. So, I'll always honor my time with Wicked.
And we just have to also add is kudos to our leader, John Chu.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You feel like you were using 110% of your own creative collaboration.
Yeah.
We're all collaborative and we all have wonderful projects to talk about, but he just brought it out in you that you just wanted to reach for the top at every day.
Yeah.
And, kudos to him.
Obviously don't know John, but anytime I've seen him at at screenings for Wicked, I was the New York premiere for Wicked for Good, or events or whatever, he's always so enthusiastic. He has such an enthusiasm for this film, obviously, and just the art form. I feel like he's always so he's just always so enthusiastic, always so positive, and seems like a great leader, it seems. And I would imagine that would be your experiences with him based on just hearing this conversation as well.
Absolutely.
Also,
absolutely.
I think what John created is something that's timeless, and I think that was really very important, right from our first collaborations in the beginning. We want it to last another 100 years, hopefully, and people to watch it and not be removed from it. And I think that John has really achieved that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful film, and it's a great place to end it. Wicked for Good, just a fantastic movie. Thank you so much for Francis, Paul, and Bernie. It was great chatting with you about this movie.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.